Vicky White was on the run with her fugitive inmate. Now, just how did they get caught? And just why did she do it? Well, we're going to talk about this and more on today's episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Well, what some people are calling, the fastest minutes in podcasting. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Charlie Crimebuster. I want to thank you for joining with us wherever you're from the East Coast to the West Coast and beyond. Well, my, how we appreciate our listeners. Hey, you're the reason we're doing this. Hey, can I invite you to send me any comments, questions, or suggestions you might have? You can reach me, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Now, you're going to receive a personal reply from me, that's right, along with a welcome gift. Also, while you're at it, please check out how you can support our special program. That program of support for the wonderful heroes that keep us safe. That's our law enforcement people, our first responders, our military. Just go to peacemakernetwork.com. Learn about this new project. Also, while you're there, you can feel free to get caught up with any of the past Charlie episodes. While you're there at peacemaker.com, I hope you will turn around and become a supporter of these brave men and women. You can do that by joining the Peacemaker Network family. A membership can be yours for as little as $3 a month. Very small amount to pay that can do a whole lot to help these men and women. There at thepeacemakernetwork.com, you'll read exactly how you can be a part of helping others. Well, now it's time to get to our focus story. You know all about it. You've read all about it. It's been one of the most amazing manhunts this year. You see, it was Assistant Director of Corrections. Her name was Vicky White. She was 56 years of age. She took off with inmate Casey White, 38. Now, the pair, authorities tell us they were not related. They went missing from Florence, Alabama, Friday a couple of weeks ago. That morning, there at the Lauderdale County Detention Center, Vicky White, she told her colleagues that she was taking Casey White to the local courthouse for a quote-unquote mental health evaluation. But, my friend, there was no evaluation scheduled. And she also, when she took him, she violated policy. She did that by escorting the inmate alone. That's according to the sheriff. He said this particular guy, someone like that, no, I'm quoting him, that should have never happened, even if we had to delay getting him to court. That's what Sheriff Singleton, that's what he told ABC News. Now, Casey White, he was charged with 2 counts of capital murder. That was in the September 2020 stabbing of 58-year-old Connie Ridgway. And he could face the death penalty if he was convicted. That's according to sheriff. Now keep this also in mind about this dude that she took off with. He was already serving a 75-year sentence. That was for a 2015 crime spree. And during that spree, it involved a home invasion, carjacking, and a police chase. Investigators learned that during the pre-sentence reporting in 2015, he had made threats against his ex-girlfriend and her sister. He also ominously warned that if he ever did get out, he would go back and kill them, and then that he wanted police to kill him. That's what the U.S. Marshals said. They also said that they had already talked to Casey White's potential targets, and that they had taken appropriate protective actions. Now, you know something else that was interesting? You see, Casey White, he had escaping on his mind all along because he had already previously planned an escape from the Lauderdale County Detention Center way back in the fall of 2020. Their authorities, they were able to stop the plot. You see, the authorities, they got word of his plans. And then they found a homemade knife. Learned that he was actually planning to take a hostage. So Casey White then was transferred back to the state prison. And he remained there to February 2022. That's when they had to get him back to the Lauderdale County facility, the county jail there, because he had to make a court appearance for the new murder charge. Now, investigators they've since learned that Casey White and Vicky White had, quote, a special relationship, that they were communicating after he was transferred from the county jail. We're going to tell you how they found all that out in just a moment. The sheriff did say that he did know that they maintained contact while he was there in the Department of Corrections. Singleton also confirmed that Casey White had visited Vicky White had visited Casey White over that course of 2 years while he was there in the state pen. They're continuing to look into how many times he visited, checking out possible recordings of those calls. It all boiled down to this. The sheriff said this. Now, this pair, in announcing the fact that they had escaped, he said this pair should be considered armed and dangerous. They may be armed with an AR-15 rifle, handguns, and a shotgun. And he said they may be driving a 2007 orange Ford Edge. That Ford Edge had minor damage to the left back bumper. Now, in a moment, I want to tell you what happened to that orange Ford Edge, that one with minor damage to the left back bumper. And I'm going to show you, now get this, how that vehicle did not lead to the capture. But maybe it did. I'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But first, let's think a little bit about this dude that you took off with, Casey White. Maybe you need to learn a little bit about him. He was actually a football player at West Limestone High School. Now, that's according to the former classmates. He grew up there in rural Leicester, Alabama. And the neighbors that knew him, well, they said that he was quite often polite, but he had no moral compass. Court records do show that in 2010, he pled guilty to a domestic assault. That was for attacking a male relative with an axe handle. Well, this is a mean dude, right? There, he received a sentence for 6 years in state prison. Then, it gets even worse. In 2015, he had been stalking an ex-girlfriend, and in a jealous rage, he rushed into her house, armed with 2 handguns. He was suspecting that she was sleeping with one of the residents. She was living in that house with 2 males, and he suspected that something was going on. But when he broke into the back bedroom, well, he found there to his surprise, well, the 2 males were holding hands with one another. And then he realized that they were not involved with his ex, but now it's too late. He ordered the roommates onto the floor at gunpoint. Then he turned his anger toward his ex-girlfriend. Somehow that victim was able to dash past him, and she went out the back door. Now, there was a reason she could do that. Stay tuned for that, by the way. He then told investigators that he shot at her as she ran, but missed. He continued firing, fled out the front door, and then he shot the roommate's dog in the process. Now, the ex had escaped through the back doors, while the roommates, they had climbed out the bathroom window, and they ran to a neighbor's house. When the officers got there, they found bullet holes in the walls, the dog dead in the hallway, and, get this, 2 children sheltering in the basement. White, he took off in a stolen car, led cops on a chase across state lines all the way to Giles County, Tennessee, before the police, they cornered him. Actually, he got stuck in the mud. He stated that he wanted to kill her and have the police kill him. His only regret was that neither was successful. And then he said that if he ever did get out, he'd go back and kill that victim. The sheriff also said that he had also threatened to kill his ex's sister. Now, local and federal law enforcement, they said that these 2 potential targets, they had already been warned of the escape and they were placed under protection. So let's talk a little bit about that area where he's from. It's called West Limestone. There's a lot of woods there, a lot of wooded areas, not very populated. He knows the area very well, someone said, and others say they don't believe that he and Vicky ran to the beach, not without him doing what he said he would do first. Rural West Limestone, well, it's 30 miles from the nearest town, and it's dotted with a whole bunch of forests, farmland, hills, hollows, and somebody said it could be really an ideal place for these fugitives to hide out. Many thought that he would return to that area, and that was the place to look for him. But, as you know, that wasn't the case. Instead, they went into a different direction. I want to tell you how authorities got hot on the trail. But right now, it's time for us here at Charlie Crime Buster, where we like to recognize what we call our courageous citizen of the week. Now, we have featured all sorts of people on our courageous citizen stories. True life people, by the way, who showed courage, helped save others. In these stories, we've told you about the courage of grandparents. We've talked about adult parents, even single mom parents, teenagers, and even small children who showed tremendous courage in helping to save others. But today's story is a first for us, and it goes right back to our story of Vicky and Casey White. Now, you remember me telling you about Casey White and his home invasion, how he stormed into the home of his ex-girlfriend, in a jealous rage was going to kill her and her 2 male roommates? Well, there was a dog there, a dog that ended up killed. His name was Missy Britches. And on that day, this dog, saved the life of Casey's ex-girlfriend and also saved the lives of her 2 roommates. You see, when Casey barged in, well, the screams from the ex-girlfriend, it alerted one of her roommate's dog, a dog that was actually part bloodhound and part German shepherd, and his name was, get this, affectionately called Missy Britches. She was actually described as a loving, gentle dog, part bloodhound again and part shepherd. Well, when this dog heard the scream, Missy, she leaped to action to save her 3 caretakers. Missy Britches actually attacked Casey White. Casey White, who was standing there with 2 guns. She attacked him without regard to her own safety. And because of that attack, no doubt, Casey was about to shoot and kill all 3 of them, but because of the attack of Missy, they were able to escape. This evil man then shot Missy, shot at the 3 people fleeing. Missy, she died at the scene, but now it is our honor to honor with respect Missy Britches as our courageous canine citizen of the week. Now back to our main focus. You see, while some may have been expecting Casey and Vicky to return to his own stomping grounds there where he wanted to take revenge, that place where he knew the area, well, there were still others that expected them to come here to Florida. You see, she had often talked of her love for the beaches. But here is how it really all started to go down at the capture. The Gulf Coast Regional Fugitive Task Force, that's headed by U.S. Marshal Marty Keeley, well, they sprung to action. These fugitive hunters, well, they hit the streets and quickly started gathering leads. Now, he gave an account of this 11-day search in an interview with Associated Press. That's what Keeley did. And it's perhaps the most detailed and comprehensive account to date of this investigation into this nationwide manhunt, the one that ended with Vicky White dead and Casey White back in custody. And law enforcement agencies, well, trying to scratch their head and figure out how this escape could have ever really happened. It appears that the task force received its first lead very early in the investigation. This was when a fellow jail worker reported that Vicky White called them and asked them to come and pick her up at an Academy Sports and Outdoor store that was there in Florence, Alabama. White had told that she had locked her keys in her car, that she needed a ride to work. Well, the employee thought it was strange, but they wanted to help out a friend. But you see, my friend, that tip led them to the parking lot. The parking lot of that sporting goods store. And there they found Vicky White's patrol car. The same vehicle in which she left the sheriff's office hours earlier with a handcuffed Casey White there in the back seat. And it also showed on surveillance video that she had staged a getaway vehicle. This was an orange Ford Edge she had purchased just days before that escape. She bought that with cash. Well, the investigators, they interviewed family members, co-workers. They examined financial, other records. And they learned something very interesting from inmates. They learned that Vicky White had had a special relationship with Casey. They learned that from inmates. You see, nobody around Vicky had any idea that was going on. They learned that Casey and the two were involved in what we call today a jailhouse romance. And just weeks, get this, just weeks before the escape, she sold her house for $95,000. That was far below market value. She sold her car. She filed her papers for retirement. And she also bought an AR-15 rifle, purchased a shotgun, and another .45 caliber pistol. Other clues also emerged. She had bought men's clothes at a local Kohl's store, also visited a store that sold sex toys. They also learned that Vicky White had left the jail with Casey White, now get this, in what investigators now believe was quote-unquote a dry run for the escape. There was actually 2 law enforcement officials said she had taken him out of jail for about 40 minutes. Just trying out the security measures, I guess. So the search is on. The search is on for this jailer and their orange car. And investigators really had no idea at that moment that the deal, well, they had already made it out of state, and they were nearly 200 miles away even before they realized they had escaped. So the tips began to flow into the Marshal Service. At first, nothing panned out. That was until, get this, a tow truck driver. That's right, a tow truck driver from Tennessee. He called, for he had towed this Ford Edge. He had towed it 3 or 4 days earlier. The car was still in his tow yard. So the task force investigators, they rushed north up into Williamson County, Tennessee. That's up near Nashville. They had the right car. They had the car, but what they didn't have was Vicky and Casey. So where was Vicky and Casey? More about that in a moment, but right now it's time for what we call our Crazy Crook story. You see, our Crazy Crook story, it kind of lightens the load, and this is about a guy who's a crazy one indeed. His name is Logan James. Did you get that? Logan James. Hey, you know, I think it's a pretty cool name, but my friend, he wasn't a cool crook by any means. You see, it appears that Logan James, well, he himself was on the run. But he was a whole lot easier to catch than our featured story fugitive, Vicky and Casey White. Logan, well, he was on the run for violation of probation. That was from the crime of wounding someone with a knife and an assault. And Logan, well, he thought pretty highly of himself. You see, he actually contacted a local news agency. That was his first mistake. He told them that he would not slip up as other criminals had. And then he took it upon himself to taunt the police. That was his second mistake. He told them, well, I've been walking around near my home and they still haven't been able to catch up with me. He said, ha ha, catch me if you can. Well, I guess he thought the police would not be interested enough to monitor his own dumb broadcasts to the community. But the police were listening, and almost instantly he was nabbed. But the police, well, they had a little something else for Logan James. Well, they issued their own statement. Their statement said, we want to say thank you to Logan James. To Logan James for drawing attention to himself and helping their efforts to return him to prison. So, my friend, if you're on the run, just might not be a good idea to contact the police, to taunt them, and to give them even more information for them to catch you. And that, my friend, Logan James, is our crazy crook story of the week. Well, now back to our main focus. Vicky White and Casey White, who are not related, well, they're on the run. Authorities are now looking around rural Tennessee, looking for clues and showing photos of the two. And while they're looking, they discovered there was a home there, a home with a few cars and trucks on the lawn, and a big sign that said for sale. And some smart investigator thought to check it out. Well, the homeowner instantly recognized a photo of Casey White. The homeowner kind of helped authorities piece together what had happened there in Tennessee. He told investigators that he sold White a Ford F-150 pickup. Sold it for cash. He said, you know, man, the truck didn't even have a license plate. But, well, White, he didn't care. That's what he told authorities. And he went on to say, yep, I sold him a truck. And so, investigators learned that he sold them a truck on the same day that they escaped from the Lauderdale County Correction Facility. And that was just a few hours after they escaped. But where are they now? Now, during that sale, a woman in an orange Ford pulled up. The two drove off, trailing one another. We know who that was. That was Vicky in that orange Ford that we talked about earlier. And that homeowner now, wait a minute, he provided one more clue. A very important one. You see, even though the truck did not have tags, it did have what every vehicle has. That's an identification number. We call it the VIN number. And so he gave that to the officials. Well, now, Casey and Vicky, they abandoned the Ford Edge there in Tennessee. And they made their way all the way up to Evansville, Indiana. Up there, Casey White, well, that pickup, he abandoned it in the bay of a car wash. That's up in Evansville. Now, in Evansville, investigators now believe that those two paid a homeless man to use his identification to rent them a hotel room, paying cash up front for a 14-day stay. That was in a motel. Used to be called a Motel 6. I believe it's a Motel 41 now or something like that. They were living under an assumed alias there in the motel. And while they were there, well, they found them another car. This time it was a Cadillac sedan. But how did authorities come to find out about that third car? Well, you remember that Ford pickup that was left abandoned in that car wash? The manager there, he noticed that truck on May the 3rd. And then he noticed that it was still there the next morning. So he called the police. Officer comes out, runs the license plates, took a report, and left. But now get this, that vehicle was not reported stolen. And to the local police, it was nothing but another abandoned vehicle. Nothing really they could do except take a report. You see, police and the searchers, well, at that time, they had no idea that this pair that was last seen in Tennessee were all the way up there in Evansville, Indiana. But as we often say, remember this now, my friend, police work is in the details. And police work is filled with endless, believe me, endless report writing. Many times it's redundant. Many times it's boring. But it was all because a police officer. He did a routine, boring report. And in that report, well, the officer had written down the VIN number of the pickup that was abandoned. Just simply an abandoned car. Now, there's a second part of it, though. Keeley's team, that U.S. Marshals group, boy, they were on top of everything. They were checking out every lead that came in. They were checking all the databases. Can you imagine how many databases they were checking all over the southeastern United States, maybe beyond that? But fortunately, one of Keeley's team, he spotted, now get this, he spotted that one VIN number. that one vehicle identification number, the one VIN number, as they checked the databases. And after checking that report of that abandoned vehicle, they turned their focus to Indiana. And so the fugitive team now descends on Evansville, working with fellow deputy marshals in Indiana. Keep these terms in mind as the hunt goes on, interviewing possible witnesses. They did that in the yard where they found the used car for sale around there in Tennessee where that Ford was left because of that tow driver. Report writing they found, and now surveillance video. All of it led to the surveillance video from that car wash. Because not only did it show that abandoned pickup, but it showed somebody showing up in a Cadillac. So then, Task Force now, they begin to drive around. They're checking motels, restaurants, parking lots. Could it be that they're still there? Surely not. Surely now they've had plenty of time to go far, far, far away. And it's not an easy task, considering all the motels and restaurants, but hey, that's what police work is, following up every lead, going through all the details. And you got to know that in the back of their minds, they were thinking, well, now they could be hundreds of miles away. And they would have been, get this, they would have been if Casey had listened to Vicky. Because Vicky, we now know she did not want them to stay over. But oh, Casey, I guess he was tired of being in the slammer, so he wanted a little glamour in a motel room. Well, eventually, they found the car at the local motel. They placed that car under surveillance. And then, sure enough, here comes Vicky White. She comes out with a wig on. But alongside her, you can't miss him, 6'9" Casey White. They hopped into the Cadillac. They drove off. The marshals were secretly trailing them. But unfortunately, the officers were seen. And then the chase was on. Vicky even called 911 during the chase, telling dispatchers, have them stop chasing, warning them that airbags would go off if they had an accident. Those airbags could kill them. But the officers, they're not going to let them get away. They rammed the car. Vicky could be heard telling Casey. There on that 911 call, they could hear her telling Casey to get out and run. And then, get this, she actually scolded him for wanting to stay. She said, quote, you just effing had to stay over, didn't you? Well, the Cadillac flipped over, and at some point, Vicky White shot herself in the head. And as officers pulled them from the wreckage, well, Casey White, he blurts out, please help my wife. She just shot herself in the head. Well, investigators quickly cuffed him. They started rendering aid to Vicky. That's as medical crews rushed to the scene. And according to the county coroners, Vicky died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Here's what the report said. The manner of death has been ruled a suicide. Well, the manhunt is over. And sheriff officials in Indiana, well, they said those people had about $29,000 left from that $95,000 in cash. There was 4 handguns, an AR-15 rifle. Vicky, of course, she was pronounced dead while at the hospital. Casey, well, he was returned Tuesday night to Alabama. There's where he's going to face additional charges. That's in addition to the murder case and the already 75-year prison sentence. If convicted on this murder trial, well, he could face the death penalty. Now, he told investigators he was prepared to have a shootout with the police, but then they were bumped over and he was captured. There was an attorney representing White. Well, he declined to comment. But Keeley, that leader of the U.S. Marshals Group, he said this, and I believe he's right on target. He said this case was solved through boots on the ground and just good, plain old police work. Hey, in just a quick second, I'm going to tell you why Vicky White did what she did. But first, salutes off to good police work. Officers who did their job took dangerous fugitives off the street. They do an amazing and dangerous job. By the way, you can help us support them. Just go to peacemakernetwork.com. peacemakernetwork.com. You can become a part of the solution. Help out us as we support them for as little as $3 a month. Now we have to ask ourselves, why did Vicky White do what she did? Some earlier, they speculated that she was coerced to help Casey White. Well, we now know that that's not true. She wasn't coerced. Others said, well, maybe it was because she was retiring. She felt depressed. She wanted an adventure in her life. Well, my friend, there's other ways you can get an adventure. Go snow skiing. Go skydiving. But then there were others who said it was nothing but pure, or rather not so pure, love. She was in love, and when you're in love, you do crazy things. You know, we may never really know the real motive, but I do know why she did it. I do know why she broke him out of jail. She did that simply because she chose to do it. She made a choice, albeit a bad one, a wrong one. But it was her choice to do so. A choice that ruined a stellar career in law enforcement, stained an esteemed reputation she had built up with her peers and leaders, and put the public in danger. One small choice had a huge negative impact. My friend, remember this, our choices matter. Think about that as you think about this true crime story. And think of this as you make your own choices in life. Choices matter. They matter far more than you often think. So until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you to make this choice. Choose to stay safe. Choose to stay alert. For the life you save, well, it may be your very own